So hi everybody, welcome to Polar Vortex Alternate Assignment Spring of 2019. Hope everybody's staying warm today, and I hope you got to sleep in a little bit too. Plan of the game for today is I'm going to go through the rest of the slides that I wanted to anyways, and then beyond that your alternate assignment kicks in, and that's going to be watching a video that I've chosen off of YouTube. It's going to be part of the whole Nearpod exercise that I'm going to put all of this stuff into. So when I'm through with the slides, you can move on to the next Nearpod section. Watch a video. There's an assignment there that I've asked you to do, and then beyond that, there's going to be some review questions because I really wanted to get through some review questions today as well. The weather is kind of messing things up a little bit. Before I start going through the slides, a couple of housekeeping items. As far as Tuesday's quiz is concerned, it is still on. We're still doing it. That's really why I want to get through the rest of these slides today and give you some practice questions in that. Beyond that, speaking of quizzes, this past Tuesday's quiz, class average was an 82%. As before, if you got a grade on that quiz that you're hoping for, great, keep doing what you're doing. If the grade wasn't what you were hoping for, get in touch with me. Okay, come and see me in my office, send me an email, whatever, we'll figure something out. So as we see here, end of class on Tuesday, that's where we got through this past Tuesday. Moving on from there, we're still talking about Gordon's stuff here. So sexuality and reproductive pattern, what are we doing here when we're talking to the family? We're looking for, is there fulfillment between partners? Because obviously that might be, that could be a source of some stress for a family. And also, what are the patterns of reproduction if you're dealing with a younger family? And another big thing here is, as we've kind of been talking about all along in all of these, parents have a lot of influence over their children. I think that goes without saying. And also within this category as well. I alluded to when we were talking about individuals and how sometimes healthcare practitioners are uncomfortable speaking with their patients about sexuality and those types of things. I think that the conversation between parents and children sometimes is a little strained when it comes to this as well. So we really need to assess that in the family, that they have younger children, obviously. And that might be a point of some intervention for us. Maybe we have some suggestions how to kind of bridge that gap and make parents more comfortable in having those conversations with their children. So when we're looking at this category, some items for assessment, are people within the relationship, be it the couple or the extended family, are they able to communicate their needs effectively between each other? Do you see a demonstration of love and of commitment and of caring in the family? Sometimes, depending on the age of the people you're speaking with, are there issues of family planning going on? Are they having trouble conceiving and those types of things? That could be something that it would be stressful for a family, and I think that that's also something that some of you, depending on your chosen nursing field, nursing subspecialty, sorry, may have to deal with as well. Coupled with that are, what about decisions about family planning and contraception and those types of things? I'd be willing to bet there again, when you have this discussion with a family, that sometimes people may have different ideas of that, and it might be a source of stress for them. Pregnancy histories, of course, and also some just really assessment of practices. Are they healthy practices? Remember one of the questions from this quiz this past week when you're dealing with individuals is, unprotected sex, and that was considered dysfunctional. Are there other practices that members of the family are partaking in that might be dysfunctional, that there could be some intervention on our part by? So coping and stress tolerance pattern. I would think, when I think of this, I think this is probably huge for families, right? When you think about families, one of the biggest things, and we talked about this the other day, is that support that we provide for each other. So how does the family you're dealing with, how do they adapt to pressures, right? Are they good about it? Do they come together as a cohesive unit when there are pressures brought upon the family, or does the stress increase, and their coping patterns aren't effective, right? So there again, how the ability to cope determines a family's success, and I think that goes without saying, and it goes a long way too. Sorry. So either are there other relationships within the family? Are they supportive of each other when there is stress going on, or is that lack of support something that actually adds more stress on top of whatever else is going on? So when we're looking at families, right, how do they cope with stress? And I think that that everybody has their own way of coping with stress, but you need to play off of what are the family's strengths, what are the stresses that they've lived through in the past. Like some families will come upon that maybe one of the family members was very sick, and they coped with that, and they came together as a family and helped that person work through it. And also, obviously, what are there some dysfunctional strategies? If there is stress going on within the family, do they shut down? Do they not talk to each other? If the lines of communication aren't open, then they're clearly not going to be able to cope with the stress that they're incurring together. And what other resources are available to the family? Values and belief patterns. So we're kind of at the tail end of Gordon's here, but as we saw with individuals, with families as well, this is a very important thing to assess, because think about all those other, we just got through talking about coping, right? Sometimes people's ways of coping are being together as a family and going to a religious service or something like that, and using that greater community to help them cope and deal with stress. So what are their values? What are their beliefs? All of these things kind of affect the behavior of the individuals and the families. So we want to talk about, what are some of their values and beliefs? What are their cultural and ethnic practices? Back to that cultural sensitivity and cultural competence and awareness, which we need to have for families. And also, are their values and their beliefs, are they healthy, or are they dysfunctional? And because of that dysfunction, is there an effect upon the family's health at that point too? All very important things here in the last category for Gordon. So environmental factors, and we talked about this the other day, at the outset. And when we get into talking about community, obviously all of this stuff is kind of, as I've always said, it's kind of fluid. It works from individual to family to community, and environmental factors is huge, right? So what are we going to assess for these families, right? Where do they live, the neighborhood that they live in, the community, the home. What's the type of, where do they live? What's the condition? In a couple of slides here, I've got actually an example of this. Are there enough rooms for the family members that are there? Is it a family of 6 and they've got 2 bedrooms? That could be a problem, right? Water and sanitation and lighting and you see their presence of infestation. I mean, we dealt a lot when I was working on the fire department. We dealt with a lot of homes that were infested with bed bugs, and it's not just a singular occurrence. If you have someplace that's infested with bed bugs, what other things are going on there? We talked about the other day. We talked about cleanliness of a home and how that impacts the health status of the family, right? Home's not clean, then there's more of they may run into issues of like illness and those types of things. So presence of infestation is kind of huge. The neighborhood, take a look around the neighborhood where your families live, right? We're going to talk about this again a lot more when it comes to community, but putting it into a familial context, is there a lot of crime? In the area where these families are living, are they not safe? Because there's issues that come out of that, right? Industry and pollution, that's a big one, and unfortunately, it's been my experience that a lot of times lower income families a lot of times are placed near industry and near where there's a lot of pollution and those types of things, and it's just kind of an unfortunate reality. And then public transportation access, again, huge, right? You've got a family that lives near a bus line. They don't have vehicles themselves. They can't get places by themselves. But if they're near public transportation, be it a bus or bigger cities, the subway or light rail or whatever, now they have the opportunity to go to the store and get healthy food, access healthcare outside of calling 911 for an ambulance, those types of things. And then community, we talked about this. What schools are around? What's the adequacy of the schools? If they're religious, how far away is their church? Do they live in that neighborhood? Shopping, recreation, and also because we're all going to be nurses someday, what are the health facilities that are available to the families? So the next thing I want to do, I've got a couple of slides here. I'm going to flip back and forth between the two of these. This picture here that you're looking at now, actually, let me make it bigger. So this picture you're looking at right now, this is a picture that I took myself when I did a windshield survey. And we're going to talk about that in community medicine, so I don't want to get too far into it right now. But this was the picture I took. This is also a house that was in my first due district for when I was a firefighter. So if anything ever happened here, we were the first ones that were called there. So I know this house very well because we were here quite a bit. But just take a look at this now. You're a community health nurse. They've sent you out to to assess a family, right? Maybe grandpa was in the hospital, something happened, they sent him home. Now you're going there not just to assess the grandfather, but also the family. And I kind of wish that the picture was a little bigger. I think if we were in the classroom, I could make it even bigger so you could pick some things out. But take a look at this for a minute. Just get a sense of you've parked across the street, you've gotten out of your vehicle, now you're walking towards this house, and this is how it presents to you. Think about, take a couple of minutes and just really think about what types of things are going through your head, thinking about Gordon and everything else. There's this one, so I'm going to kind of pause and stop talking for a minute so you can kind of take a look and look through this picture and, see what might jump out at you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the second picture now. And this one, I can't take credit for this one. Thank you to Google Maps for letting me kind of take a look at this and take a screenshot of it for you. But again, much like that last picture, take a look at, now there's two houses here. The one I'm kind of keying in on is the one that's on the left. Again, take a look at it. What do you see? What kind of things jump out at you as you look at this house, right? And then I'm going to go back to the other one and we'll kind of go through both of them. Maybe I can give some backstory as well to give you a sense of that family assessment and that. So take a look at this quick. Think about what you see. I mean, I look at this and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 or 6 things just looking at this picture that really jump out at me. Okay, so let's go back to the first one. I will say that as you look at this, as you look at the house, obviously there's 1, 2, 3 points of entry. So it's a multifamily house. It's clearly as you look at like the eave trough on the side of the house there, falling off the side of the house. So it's somewhat in disrepair. Notice the snow on the ground. So obviously this picture is taken in the winter. And then take a look at the attic window on the left side of the house. So along that long side of the house, working away from the street. It's open. Okay, so that might impact the family a bit, right? I mean, it's winter. We're going to assume it's cold. It's cold today. This day, I don't remember when I took this picture. This was years ago. But, maybe the day was a lot like today. It's -3 outside, right? So you've got a family living in that house. They've got a window open up top. So how's that for heat? And if that window's open and the house isn't that much disrepair, what else is going on here? I'll let you kind of in on, I've taken patients out of that. You can see in the side yard that there's a set of stairs that goes down to a door. So I've been in that apartment downstairs before for medical emergencies. And, the disrepair you see on the outside of the house, trust me when I say it's happening on the inside of the house as well. The walls were in poor condition. This was an apartment I remember going into where they had multiple fly. You put them up. It's like glue. I forget what they call it, but it's if you've got like flies flying around. That's what these folks had. They had a bunch of them hanging from the ceiling, which had dead flies on them, and there were other flies flying around. So it goes back to the infestation. So you're assessing this family and you're kind of taking all of this in and you're thinking, wow, there's just a lot going on here with them, right? So I'm going to go on to the next picture. Same house, kind of go over some things that jump out at me, but kind of remember that house next door as well. So we're talking about environment when we're thinking about the family, right? And we talked about crime, neighborhoods, and all those types of things. So we've got people that are living in the house on the left. And when I look at that, the first thing that a couple things that jump out at me for that house, right? Take a look at the windows on the second floor. The middle window actually has a piece of plywood over it. So that tells me it's probably been broken. Look at the other windows though, plastic, right? Those are the windows there. Now I don't know when this picture was taken, but there again, if this was the wintertime like it is now, there's another assessment thing for the family. It's not safe for them to live there, right? There's a garbage can on the front porch that's got garbage that's overflowing out of it. Now think back when we were talking about the environment and crime and that. The house next door, front two windows are boarded up. Clearly there's nobody living there. Little tidbit. On the side there, you see the electric boxes. All of those have been pulled. So there's no electricity to that house. And you've also got gang graffiti on the front of this house. So you're assessing a family that lives in the house on the left. And already you're thinking, before you've even talked to them, right? You're thinking the neighborhood isn't all that great. They're impacted by crime. They're impacted by the condition of their own home. Right, so you've already got these things kind of developing in your head, like, okay, I need to write all this stuff down. You're thinking, what kind of services do they have? What kind of services do they need? All those types of things. So a couple of pictures, snapshots. I wish we were in class today because I think that we could have a fairly decent expanded discussion about this, but unfortunately, polar vortex and all. So moving along, I want to kind of go through these fairly quickly. I know that we talked about I kind of gave you my opinion on Duval and all the developmental stages. I bring this up again just to kind of remind everybody of what their stages are. I'm going to go through the slides. I realize there again that this is not always the traditional family. We talked about that the other day where, really the definition of family has changed. It's evolved. But there are some things within these next few slides that each family, no matter what the makeup is, we may see with them. So I kind of wanted to go through these, okay? So the couple, right? And I think that couple can be anything, right? Any combination, right? We talked about the chart. I talked about the chart that's in your book and all the different combinations and everything, right? But no matter the combination, the couple is going to go through these types of stages, right? You have to adapt to the expectation of your partner, right? You're bringing in your own personal characteristics and you're becoming a couple. Decisions about employment and who pays the bills and who are we hanging out with and who's doing tasks at home, right? These all are things that couples need to work through. And they also they could be points of stress for them as well, right? So what do we do for them as nurses? We want to make sure they got good health practices and habits in their lifestyle. And we've talked about this before. I know it's ad nauseum at this point. Rest, exercise, diet, stop smoking, and activities that help each person in that couple kind of realize who they are. Again, we're kind of do this. I think that we did it for the couples, and now we're doing it for the childbearing family. So you've got the couples, childbearing family. There again could be any makeup of a couple, right? So again, now they're adjusting. They've got these new roles and functions and responsibilities. They figured out who they were as a couple, no matter what that makeup is. But now they've added on all this responsibility of having children. Traditions and ways of doing things and even household chores and responsibilities shift and change. And I think at points that may be a cause of stress because there again, if you have a couple that's working together but they have differences of opinion on how things are being done or how even again household tasks, right? That can certainly be a source of stress, and that changes when you add children into it as well. You want to make sure that as a nurse you're encouraging interaction between parent or parents and the children. Remember, young children, especially childbearing age and even through the younger years, the biggest influence on children, and I'll keep saying this because when we start with the different stages of life, you'll hear it all over again. The biggest influence on children are the adults that are in their lives and are influencing them. So the childbearing family, maybe each person in that couple, they had jobs and the jobs were making ends meet, but now you add a child into the mix, and now, do they have sufficient financial resources, right? Do they have ways to get the child to child visits and all those types of things? You as a nurse may be interacting with them to make sure that they get to those. Punishment and obedience, I think a lot of times that parents may not have that discussion with each other until all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, we've got a child. And, is there a difference of opinion on that? Also, issues of abuse and neglect come up, unfortunately, within this category. And I think that we see it, and we will see it throughout the other stages that we'll talk about as well. That's something that we as healthcare providers need to be very, very in tune with. And we'll talk about that again as we move along. But remember that probably no matter where you work as a nurse, you're a mandated reporter. If you see issues of abuse and neglect going on in a child, you have a moral obligation, and also you're mandated to report something like that. So that's another thing that you're going to be looking at and assessing in this type of a family, and as we move along as well. Toddlers and preschoolers. Big thing here is, you get those kids that want to explore everything, right? But we need to impress upon our parents that, you need to make a safe environment for that child. And we'll talk about this a lot more when we get to the toddlers and preschoolers. The other big key here is, and I think I've kind of alluded to this as well, the parents are there, and the parents need to model good health behaviors. The problem is if the parents don't have good health behaviors to begin with, how are they going to model that, right? That's where we as nurses kind of come in. We need to educate them on good health behaviors and that diet and hygiene and food and sleep. And there's dental. We'll talk about dental a lot, dentition. We'll talk about that a lot as we go on. But just something as simple as mom or dad brushing their teeth in the morning with a child there. That is something very simple, but it also gives, that's a health promotion thing that child would probably carry with them throughout their entire life. And when they get older and have kids of their own, guess what? They'll do the same thing. So children, preschoolers and toddlers, their development is influenced by their values and their beliefs, which is usually they model that after their parents, right? And also another big thing here that we need to worry about is that kids can be tiring. Again, I wish we were in class. Who out there is a babysitter? And just to spend a few hours with a kid, aren't you exhausted at the end of that? So think about the parents being with these children, these very active, very demanding children all the time. We need to be worried about and assessing the parents to make sure that they're not getting overly exhausted. Because if they get overly exhausted, if they're too tired, that negative effects are to follow at that point, right? So here you've got school-age children. So we're getting a little bit older, right? And remember, we're still thinking about this within a familial, within a family context. At this point, the kids, they want to start kind of branching out a little bit. They still want mom and dad around for that safety net, but, they're trying to find out who they are and, kind of flexing their wings a bit. So, in the thing with the families here is that, the families need to reorganize a little bit because the kids' world is going to start to expand, right? Up to this point, their entire world has been at home and maybe a little bit at school. But think back to, I know a lot of you did dance and played sports and all those types of things. At some point, there was a shift from the family home to all of those activities, right? So, and then you start going to school and you socialize more, and that all has an impact on the family. And we start to see that around this with the school-age children. Again, we're talking about risks and benefits, healthy behaviors. Hopefully the parents have modeled that up to this point and continue to reinforce that. Adolescence. So the family ties are really loosening a lot more here, right? Lots of high-risk behaviors for adolescents. They're still trying to figure out who they are. They want to be autonomous. They want to be independent of their parents. And this is really the stage where you start to see a lot of conflict between parent and child, because the child's peers are the ones that really start to have more of an influence than the parents do. And the parents, a lot of times, I think, aren't really sure how to balance that. So that has a negative impact on the families. But there again, if you've got a family that communicates well in that, maybe that negative impact won't really be evident, or maybe it won't even exist. But there again, adolescents, they start to kind of branch out on their own, and they start to challenge a lot of the things. You see their family values in that. They want to develop their own identity, and maybe the identity that they're forming isn't consistent with the family unit's values at that point. So I see a lot of potential for conflict here in that. And there again, I really wish we were in class right now, because I think we could have a decent discussion about some of your experiences with that as well. Young adults, number one goal, right? Launch the children. That's where all of you guys are at right now, right? You're in school, your parents are like, okay, off you go. Most of them are. Now, and at this point, though, so the family dynamic is really changing. Like before, even if there was, you had adolescence and there was some conflict there was some semblance of the family unit that had existed prior, right? But now kids are off to school, and mom and dad the two that are in the relationship are all of a sudden going, okay, now what? And sometimes we may need to help parents kind of work through that. But the biggest goal here is, that launching of the children. The term kind of kills me. I think it's kind of funny, because again, all I see is pushing the kids out the front door, which we certainly don't do. But helping young adults to kind of take that identity that they've been forming and help them to kind of go off into society and become contributing members, which you're all doing right now by even being here and going to school and that kind of stuff. So, middle-aged adults. So, empty nest syndrome is common. You're looking at it. Well, kind of. You can only see the wall behind me, but this is the empty nest syndrome. And the important thing here for this family stage is, I think, that just what it says there, right? Were mom and dad, or was the couple strong on their own, or were they strong with the child involved? And now that the child's not there anymore, they're kind of sitting there looking at each other like, okay, now what? There's a lot of challenges for folks these ages. Care of aging parents. You guys have heard me talk about my dad quite a bit. Thankfully, we haven't hit that grandparent role yet. I'm not really ready for that. There's an increased vulnerability for health problems because, we're getting older. So heart disease and strokes and cancer and all those types of things. And when we get to middle-aged adults, I realize it says it here, but we'll talk about this a lot more, right? All these lifestyle choices that they made earlier in their life are going to impact what risk factors they realize now that they're this age. And to kind of tie the family thing into this, again, families that have good diets and exercise and all of that, when they reach this point in their life, even if it's just a mom and a dad, or a dad and a dad, or a mom and a mom, or whatever, if they had good life, if together they had those good lifestyle choices before, they'll continue them now, and you'll see less risk factors and health problems. So older adults, retirement, there's decreased income, adjusted living standards, and really like you think about the family unit at this point, it's probably going to go through a lot of change. Older adults, right? They retire, but maybe they have grandchildren. We'll talk about at some point where it's probably way down the line, one of the last chapters, but grandparents now caring for grandchildren because of one reason or another, that their children, the children of the grandparents aren't around to take care of their own kids. So, sorry guys. So what are the challenges of the families now, right? Changing homes, changing locations, all those types of things. And these are all things that we're going to look at as nurses, depending on what stage that family is in, what kind of interventions we might suggest. So back to the nursing process, always back to the nursing process in some way, right? So the steps are the same, identical to the individual. We're going to use Gordon's framework. We're going to use our 11 points to assess for areas where we can find deficiencies for health promotion and intervention, right? Develop that plan. We want to make sure that when we're developing a plan in this process, that all family members are involved and they provide input as appropriate. Obviously, a 1-year-old or 2-year-old probably isn't going to be part of this process, but if you have a family with an adolescent and you're talking about health promotion initiatives, let the adolescent be part of that, because it's going to impact them, right? And their opinion matters as well. So we're going to implement that plan. The idea is we want to foster health promotion, make sure that they're doing health promotion activities and those types of things. And as before, if within implementing a plan, something's not working, change it up, right? And then finally, we're going to evaluate it. Are we going to, if were the interventions successful? Did they work, or didn't they? And if they didn't, why didn't they? Let's figure that out as well. On this last slide here, so 5 measures, family functioning. We can use to say, hey, was that plan effective? Was there a change in any of the patterns that you saw before that you assessed, right? Did the family have effective communication? If they had effective communication, then that would go a long way to meet the goals that you set forth when you put a plan into place, right? If they didn't have good communication, something probably failed along the way. Were they able to express emotions amongst each other? Did they feel free? Again, going back to effective communication, but I think expressing emotions like, they're upset because part of the plan we tried to put in place wasn't working, but they have to feel the ability to be able to express that, right? And then how responsive was the plan we came up with to each of the individual members? If a person doesn't feel like their needs are being met within the context of a family on a plan like this, they're not going to be engaged in what you're doing. And problem-solving ability. So was the family able to come together as a unit? Were they able to solve the problem that that we identified? Okay, so here's the deal. All right, I'm going to upload this to Nearpod. I hope that everybody has watched this. Your quiz on Tuesday will be based on this material, so hopefully everybody's seen this. From here, I would like everybody to watch the video that I put up. Again, it's only about 4.5 minutes long, so it shouldn't take you that long. Then go to the journal in Blackboard, and I would really like to see I want to see entries from everybody in class on the couple of questions that I posed there. Beyond that, review questions are there for you in Nearpod. Again, these are ones I wanted to kind of go over in class today, but we weren't able to. So with that, I hope everybody has a good weekend. If your team's playing on Sunday, good luck. And make sure you stay warm, and I will see everybody on Tuesday. If you have any questions whatsoever about the assignment or anything else, just shoot me an email, okay? I'll be around. So have a good weekend, everybody.